atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy.
Hi, and welcome to our bonus show of the Politics Guys. Again, Jay Carson, your defender of freedom here in Cleveland, Ohio. And joining me today is Justin Holmes, associate professor of political science at Northern Iowa University, to continue our discussion about what the hell is going on this last week or so. One of the topics we had talked about was on our last show, or it might be on this show, depending on how the editing goes, Justin. We're trying to figure that out.
Yes.
Is potential impeachment of Supreme Court justices or investigations into them. And we've also got something sort of the other side of the coin, and this is a House vote seeking to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt.
Yes, we do. So looking at that, we have this vote that comes up. Basically, the House introduces a resolution to fine Garland $10,000 a day because they want this tape from Special Prosecutor Robert Hur's interview with Biden over his own, now largely forgotten, document storage investigation. They're not so interested necessarily in the kind of storage of documents, but one of the sort of punchlines out of the Hur report, where essentially declines to press charges, is that, Biden is a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. So, certainly for Democrats, they were a little riled that was...
Nobody's going to buy that.
No, oh, come on. Of course not. So anyway, so Republicans, of course, pounced on this line and they want the tapes. They want to hear exactly what went down in this interview. Democrats and Garland have objected on a couple grounds. One, that essentially there's not a legitimate legislative purpose to basically subpoena these, and that essentially Republicans just want these tapes for campaign ads. Ultimately, the contempt vote narrowly loses, with 4 Republicans voting against it, joining all of the Democrats. So, as matters of legal stuff go, I'm going to let you kick this off because this is certainly your area of expertise.
Yeah, this was the House's second try at this, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the last one was also unsuccessful. And look, I think you characterize it correctly. There's nothing, I guess, new to be learned from the recording because we have the transcripts. But what you would hear is how President Biden responds to these questions. Get a sense of whether there are freezes, pauses, confusion, mumbling, inaudible. There were, I think, on the transcript, there's something like 40 some places that are just marked inaudible. So it does, I think, present something of a puzzle to what was he saying there. Some people have noticed he has a tendency just to trail off sometimes. And yes, you're exactly right. This is a purely political piece of trying to get this to use it for commercials. I'm sort of at this point curious whether the DNC might also sign on and say to do this. So, I think to the legal points of it, I think Garland, it's really sort of thin ice here. I shouldn't say thin ice. Thin ice implies something that bad is going to happen. But his argument, let's say, is a thin reed. One, the argument was it's privileged, executive privilege. But of course it's not once you've already released the transcript. Secondly, the point of this isn't a legitimate investigation. I think that's sort of hard to argue now. And again, this just sort of goes to show, this was an illegitimate investigation a couple of weeks ago, but yet it is an investigation that many Democrats are now looking into. And that is the president fit to either serve another term or to continue this term? So I think Garland doesn't have a great argument here. End of the day, right? Contempt of Congress is not a court proceeding; it's a political proceeding. Mm-hmm. So what matters is, do you have the votes or don't you have the votes? And they did not have the votes this time. I'd be curious if they might have the votes later. just the way things are going. There may be Democrats who want to say, yeah, we should hear these tapes. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's a fascinating, and also it's a little troubling to me that look, I don't think there's a real good reason not to provide this information, and I think this kind of just I would say, you can say Republicans lost the vote. I would say no, they absolutely won the vote, because what they did is put a whole bunch of Democrats on the record, essentially saying, well, we don't want to hear about whether, we don't want to know how we actually performed in this interview. So if you can't use the tapes against Biden, I think you can use the vote against some Democrats who might be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my read on this, I mean, we've been through some of these, questions with the House, pulling up, trying to pull up, subpoena various things for investigation purposes and whatnot. And certainly, there was pushback from Trump on some of these things, as well. And Trump aligned people and in the spirit of
absolutely, and I would say,
and in the spirit of fair play,
it should be right.
And in the spirit of fair play, I mean, my sense is that probably, when it comes to this sort of thing, Congress's investigative powers are fairly broad. I mean, in terms of defining what a legitimate legislative purpose is. I would tend to share your assessment that I don't know what new we get out of this at this point. I mean, this might have been an interesting story 2 weeks ago, but now we have, just in terms of, Biden's fitness. I mean, I guess, if we've got a very public, version of that, I don't know that this changes much. I suppose, and maybe this was what you were going to say, it documents it going further back.
Exactly. It would be the who knew this and when did they know it?
When did they know it? Yeah. So, and as much as I hate to give, points here, I mean, it strikes me as something that's, within the purview of Congress, is a legitimate thing that they could be doing. So, I don't know that I have a giant objection. I do wonder, what do you think about those 4 Republicans that voted against it? The sense I have is that they're all kind of swing district moderates is what pushed them out. I mean, do you think that's what's...
I'm not clear why they would have voted against it.
Or is there something like even more sinister, like to keep it going?
Well, there is that.
Let's drag this out so we can vote on it.
There is that, and to make sure that, because again, it would be great to have those tapes. Almost as good is to have all these Democrats for Republican talking point to say they won't let you hear just how bad President Biden was. This is the full court press from the Attorney General, the Biden administration, and House Democrats seeking to cover up just how impaired he is. America, they don't want you to know this. We do. No, that may be a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I think there may be something to it as well.
I mean, I think the politics of this may well be that, Republicans can't lose with this.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I think you get the tapes.
I mean, either they get the tapes or they get to say, hey, what are you hiding? Which, I mean, so often in politics, I mean, that does fuel speculation. I mean, thinking about, Trump's tax returns that never showed up, or Romney's tax returns that never showed up, the kind of chatter on the Democratic side was, what in here is worse than what they look like for hiding things, know? And
I know. And
so it's easy to make that spin,
if you're a Democratic congressman in a close swing district, and someone asks the question of, well, why don't you want people to hear about whether, Biden was impaired? Shouldn't the people have the right to know this? And the responsibility and investigation is over, and there's no point in this, and it's, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But that's hard to maintain that position when at the same time you have so many members of your own party saying he's not fit to run again.
Right. Right.
And again, I think a lot of this playbook, right, was written before the debate.
Oh yeah.
So this was anyway. So I
mean, Republicans have been hammering on Biden's competence for 3 years. Yeah. So I mean, this is nothing new. So
no, I think there also might have been this kind of institutional piece of, and I think I could make a good argument again, against the criminalization of politics and this whole, the inherent contempt kind of thing. And then what do you do? And is it, holding an attorney general in contempt and what happens?
Could you tell us a little more about inherent contempt for those of us that haven't done the
Well, I'm not even really sure because, again, this is sort of new to me. And this is the first time I have seen this.
I was just assuming this was my lack of law school betraying me here.
Yeah, no. Essentially, it's the idea of it's sort of a rolling violation, right? It's not just like as he's in contempt because he didn't show up or he didn't produce this thing. It's sort of like he still hasn't shown up and produced this thing. So it's a rolling violation and we're going to assess fines, day after day. I'm not entirely sure that Congress has the authority to do that between you and me. So I think a lot of that's window dressing. I don't think Congress can just go and unilaterally fine people. That would be a bill of attainder.
I was just going to say bill of attainder. Yeah. To grab a vocabulary word I know.
So, I mean, they do have contempt powers. But again, the way the contempt thing works, and this has always been sort of the weird, goofy thing, and actually we'll touch on this when we talk about the Project 2025 stuff, is that, look, Congress can hold whoever in contempt as it wants, but they need to have an enforcement mechanism. Now, I suppose, like, theoretically, if you're held in contempt of Congress and you come, wandering through the halls with a tour group, the sergeant at arms could arrest you or something like that. But it would fall to the Department of Justice to actually prosecute you. Right. And in most cases, these are never prosecuted until fairly recently.
So basically, we're going to have the Attorney General prosecute himself on this to enforce. Right.
He's unlikely to do so.
You think?
Yeah, I do think. And well, again, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress back in the Obama administration in relating to the Fast and Furious, gun run investigation, and he declined to bring charges against himself. So, it's always been, to me, the contempt of Congress should be, ought to remain a political remedy rather than a legal/judicial remedy.
So when you say political remedy,
the other guy just look really bad, and it's the, hey, what are they hiding kind of thing,
right? So I mean, so is that all? You've been a very bad boy is about all they can do with this, and then
look, if you do have a justice department that wants to prosecute, it can, and it has, right? Steve Bannon's going to jail.
Point taken.
And the former trade negotiator. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I was up too late last night. I'm becoming. The party's going to start calling to replace me.
We'll have to find a suitable replacement on 4 weeks' notice. But yeah, you don't have trade envoys just at the top of your head.
No, I don't, but I should. Who is currently in federal prison for contempt of Congress? So that's and that is fairly new that you have actual people prosecuted and put away. So again, to me, it maybe there's someone saying, look, we need to stop the, criminalization of these things and putting your political opponents in jail, as opposed to just making them look bad. So,
I mean, I will say,
Peter Navarro.
Yes.
I apologize. Again, that's one of the things you're always supposed to do is remember the names of political prisoners and keep them forefront and in the media. So my apologies to Peter Navarro, but he is sitting in jail for contempt of Congress. And I'd be remiss if I didn't note that Hunter Biden is not. So, I mean, one can make the argument about what's, so anyway, that's your thoughts on contempt of Congress or the vote.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,